I started thinking about when it all began. The suitcase lay open in the trunk. I had rolled up their clothes the night before, labeled every medication bag, printed out all the flight confirmations. I even checked the traffic twice before pulling up to their driveway. My dad grunted something about the weather. My mom was unusually quiet. Then she said it. "You don't need to drive us all the way. Sarah will take it from here." I blinked. Sarah? My sister was already on the porch, wheeling her own suitcase. She hugged Mom, then turned to me like I was just the Uber driver. "What do you mean?" I asked. My voice came out calm, but my hands were tightening around the wheel. Mom adjusted her scarf. "It's just simpler this way. You've done enough already." I looked at Sarah, waiting for her to explain, to say it was a joke, but she just smiled, kissed my cheek, and said, "Thanks for putting it all together. Seriously." Then she climbed into the passenger seat. My parents got in behind her. No room for me. I watched the car drive away, my own tail lights blinking back at me in mockery as they turned the corner. I stood there in the driveway, keys in hand, listening to the silence they left behind. A few neighbors passed, nodding politely. The sprinkler turned on by itself. I didn't move for a while. Later, inside, I stared at the open booking dashboard on my laptop. Hotels, excursions, transfers, all under my name. Paid, reserved, planned down to the last dietary need. I could hear Sarah laughing in a voice memo she'd sent to our family group chat. "Mom, don't forget your passport this time, okay?" I hovered over the cancel button, just for the hotel at first, then the flights, then the car rentals. Each click felt like peeling off a mask. The messages started coming in that evening. Sarah. "Wait, did something get messed up with the hotel? We can't check in." Mom. "Darling, can you call them?" "There's some mistake." I stared at my phone, then turned it over. I brewed coffee instead of tea. No clink of the spoon in the sugar jar. No cinnamon the way Mom liked it. Just black. Hot. Bitter. Mine. "Where are you?" came Dad's voice on voicemail. They said the credit card was declined. I deleted the message. A week later, they were back, and so was I. Not as the driver, the planner, the fixer, just a man in his own home, drinking coffee without explaining himself. I started thinking about when it all began. The first thing I did was rearrange the mugs. It sounds ridiculous, but that cabinet had always been Mom's territory. Cups for guests on the top shelf, our chipped everyday ones in the middle, herbal teas to the left, sugar on the right. That morning, I moved my favorite mug, a navy ceramic one I bought years ago but rarely used, to the front. Then I sat down and reread the messages. Sarah had switched to passive-aggressive mode. Sarah. "Would have been nice to know you canceled everything. I had to put the hotel on my card." Me. "You're welcome." Sarah. "Are you serious?" I didn't answer. I stared at the blinking cursor, then closed the chat entirely. By noon, Mom had left 2 voicemails and 1 long email that began with, "I don't understand what's happening." I didn't reply to that either. Instead, I walked through my apartment like I didn't recognize it. The walls still had family photos, a graduation picture, a Thanksgiving table. Me, always slightly off-center, holding someone else's coat or carving a turkey. I sat on the couch and let the silence breathe. My phone buzzed again. I muted it. Later that day, I went for a walk. At the park, I saw a young couple arguing near the fountain. The man was holding 2 ice cream cones, one of them melting down his wrist. The woman waved her hands, visibly upset, then turned and walked off. He stood there, dripping. It struck me then. How much effort we put into holding things together, long after they've slipped from our grip. I came home and opened my laptop, pulled up the spreadsheet I'd made for the trip. It was still there. Dates, flight numbers, confirmation codes. I hovered the mouse over delete, but something stopped me. I renamed the file vacationsansme.xlsx. That night, I poured myself a drink and FaceTimed Daniel. He was my oldest friend from college, someone who'd seen me before the family obligations stacked up like sandbags. "You look like crap," he said, grinning. "Thanks, you're glowing." "What happened?" I hesitated, then told him everything. How I'd planned the trip for months, how I was edged out of it like an afterthought, how they expected me to keep paying anyway. When I finished, he didn't say anything for a while. Then, "Dude, that's messed up. You okay?" I didn't answer right away. I didn't know yet. "I think I'm done being useful," I said finally. Daniel leaned back in his chair, whistling. "Took you long enough." We laughed. For a moment, I felt something uncoil in my chest, not quite relief, but the beginning of space. Before hanging up, he said, "You should still go. Somewhere. Doesn't have to be Spain." I nodded. But that night, I didn't dream about beaches or planes. I dreamed I was in a crowded room full of my family. I kept trying to speak, but every time I opened my mouth, someone else answered for me. I woke up sweating, the coffee mug still on the table, cold, untouched. And I knew I had to figure out when exactly I'd disappeared. The next morning, I opened a new document and titled it, "When It Started Breaking." I didn't know what I planned to write, but I kept staring at the blinking cursor, like it might give me permission. The house was quiet. No incoming calls yet. Just the tick of the kitchen clock and the low hum of the fridge. I typed, "It started the night Sarah moved back in. Flashback, 5 years ago. She was crying in the driveway, mascara streaking down her cheeks, bags bursting with clothes and regret." "They don't understand me," she said. Mom stood behind her, arms crossed. Dad lit a cigarette, even though he'd quit. I remember offering to help carry her stuff. I cleared out my study for her, said I'd sleep on the couch until she gets back on her feet. She never left. Back in the present, I scrolled through old texts. Patterns were everywhere. Me driving Dad to appointments, me fixing the boiler, me covering the gap when Sarah lost her job. Always with a joke, a shrug, no problem. I opened the bank app, looked at the last 3 months of expenses. The Spain trip alone was nearly $4,000. Why hadn't I said no? I closed the laptop and grabbed my keys. I needed air. I drove to the library, one of the few places where silence didn't feel like failure. At the far end of the non-fiction aisle, I spotted a familiar face, Elena, an old neighbor. She was reading to her kid, curled on a beanbag. We hadn't talked in years. "Elena?" She looked up, surprised. "Oh my God, hey, I thought you moved." "Still here?" We chatted a bit, small talk. Then she asked the question I didn't see coming. "Your mom still volunteering at the shelter?" "Yeah, I think so." "She's lucky to have you around. You've always been, solid." Solid. The word hit me like a shove. I smiled and excused myself. Later that day, I called my mother. She answered immediately. "Thank God. Are you all right?" "I'm fine. Why haven't you—" "I'm not going to fix this." Silence. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm not calling the hotel. I'm not rebooking your excursions. I'm not your safety net anymore." Her voice tightened. "This is not like you." "I know," I said. "That's the point." Another pause. I imagined her face, tight-lipped, eyes darting to Dad, maybe waiting for him to intervene. "I raised you better than this," she said finally. That was the crack, the one that let the rot through. I hung up without replying. That night, I took all the old travel photos off the wall, sorted them into a box labeled past. The silence in the apartment started to feel different, not empty, open. I texted Daniel. Me. Thinking of taking a trip. Daniel. About damn time. Me. Just me this time. Daniel. Even better. Where? I didn't answer. I wasn't sure yet, but I knew the destination didn't matter as much as the decision to go. I brewed coffee again, same mug, same bitterness. But now, it tasted like choice. I didn't expect them to come straight to my apartment. It was raining, not hard, but enough to make the world feel muffled. I was on the couch, halfway through a book I wasn't really reading, when the buzzer rang. I let it go once, twice. The third time, I answered. "Open the door," Mom said. I hesitated. Then pressed the button. She walked in first, umbrella dripping, coat too bright for the weather. Dad followed slower. Sarah wasn't with them, but I felt her in the silence that trailed them. "You haven't been answering," Mom said, not sitting down. "I know. You left us in another country. We were stranded." "You weren't stranded," I said quietly. "You had Sarah, and credit cards." "You canceled everything." Her voice cracked, louder now. "What kind of son does that?" I stood. The kind who's done being erased. She blinked. Dad looked at the floor. "We didn't erase you," she said too quickly. "Didn't you?" I stepped closer. "You planned a family trip. I organized it, paid for it, and then you left me out, like I was a footnote." Dad finally spoke. "It was a misunderstanding. Your mother—" "No," I cut in. "It wasn't. It was a choice. You made space for Sarah and cut me out like it didn't matter." Mom opened her mouth, but I held up my hand. "I was the one who always made things work. I booked flights, fixed leaks, moved schedules, and you all just expected it, like I was a function, not a person." The room fell into a tense quiet. "I have always been there," I said. "And for what? To be told I'm ungrateful when I draw a line?" Mom sat down then, slowly, like the weight of what I said was beginning to land. "We thought you didn't mind," she whispered. "I did. I just didn't say it. And that's on me." Dad cleared his throat. "Maybe we leaned too hard." "You didn't lean. You stood on me." There it was. The truth, exposed like a raw nerve. "I didn't cancel the trip to punish you," I added. "I canceled it because I finally realized it wasn't mine." No one spoke. The rain tapped against the window. Somewhere down the hall, a door slammed. Mom looked up at me, her eyes suddenly glassy. "So what now?" she asked. "I don't know," I said, "but I'm not going back to how it was." When they left, I didn't walk them out. I stood at the window and watched them retreat under one umbrella, two shrinking silhouettes merging with the street. That night, I didn't sleep much. I kept thinking about Sarah, about how quiet she'd been. Then I remembered something, her hand on Mom's back that day at the airport. Comforting, possessive, and for the first time, I wondered if this wasn't her idea all along. The thought should have made me angry. Instead, it made me calm. ChatGPT skazal. The next morning, I went into work and cleared my desk. I didn't quit. I just needed space. I told my boss I was taking a week. No one questioned it. They never did. I was dependable, predictable. The guy who never left early, never said no, never made waves. As I walked out, I passed the HR glass door and saw my reflection. Shirt tucked in, eyes tired, posture too straight. I looked like someone who hadn't had a real thought of his own in years. On the way home, I stopped at a small travel agency. I don't know why. Something about the analogness of it appealed to me. The woman behind the desk had silver hair and dark green glasses. "Looking for something in particular?" she asked. "Number just away." She smiled. "Best reason I've heard all week." I asked her to print out a few brochures, places I'd never been, places I hadn't planned for anyone else. Back home, I laid them on the table like tarot cards. Portugal, Iceland, Japan, Montana. Then I opened my laptop to check emails. One caught my eye. Subject: Family Account Access Notification. It was an automated message. Apparently, Sarah had tried to reset the password on the travel portal I used. My name was still listed as primary contact. I double-checked the account. Yes, she'd logged in 2 days ago, probably fishing for receipts, maybe trying to get money back, or maybe something else. That night, I found the group chat still active. I scrolled back through the messages. The tone had shifted. Mom, I just don't know what got into him. Sarah, he's acting like we owe him something. Dad, maybe we do. That stopped me. A second later, I got a message. Director. From Sarah. Sarah, you've made your point. You can stop now. No hello, no apology, just control, thinly veiled. I stared at the words, typed something, deleted it. Instead, I called Daniel. She's trying to get into my accounts, I said. Jesus, why? Because she thinks she's still entitled to something. He paused. What are you going to do? I looked at the brochures, spread out like a map of freedom. I think I'm done reacting. What do you mean? I mean, I've spent my whole life anticipating, fixing, getting ahead of disaster. But what if I just stop? Daniel exhaled. Then maybe, finally, you start living. After we hung up, I changed every password, unlinked every shared credit card. Then I brewed a cup of tea, yes, tea this time, and sat by the window. I thought about Sarah, about how she'd always managed to stay center stage with minimal effort, emotional pyrotechnics, big gestures, and how I'd been the quiet scaffolding behind her show. But the scaffolding had stepped away, and the theater was starting to collapse. 3 days later, I went to a dinner party. Daniel had invited me. His friend from work was hosting. I almost said no. Crowds weren't my thing lately, and I didn't know anyone but him. But something in me said, go. Maybe I needed to be somewhere no one knew me as the fixer. The apartment was warm, filled with the low thrum of music and the clink of glasses. People laughed in corners, talked about trips and projects and things they actually liked. No one asked me to refill the water pitcher or explain why someone else was late. I stood by the window with a drink in hand when a woman joined me. Too loud? She asked, smiling. Little bit. She held out her hand. Maya. We talked for 10 minutes before she asked what I did. I told her I was in operations. She didn't ask which company. She just said, I'm terrible at operations. You'd hate my inbox. And I laughed. Not out of politeness, actually laughed. Daniel came over later, eyebrows raised. You're talking to people. Barely. You look lighter. I didn't answer, but I felt it too. The next day, I met him at a coffee shop to talk. He pulled out his laptop. So, you mentioned Montana? I did. He smirked. Not exactly Spain. Exactly. We sat with our laptops side by side, looking at cabins, hiking trails, rental cars. It was the first trip I'd planned where every choice was for me. No allergies to account for, no schedule to please. Just silence, space, pine trees. After we finished, he leaned back. You sure you're ready? I nodded. I don't know what I'm going to find out there, but I know what I'll leave behind. Back home, I packed light. Just the essentials. I kept the folder with travel confirmations tucked in the side pocket of my backpack, like a quiet rebellion. Then I cleaned the apartment. I didn't realize why until I found myself wiping the last frame of an old family photo. Me, Sarah, Mom, Dad, smiling at some beach, probably Florida. I took it down, put it in a drawer. The apartment felt bigger. That night, I got one last text from Sarah. Sarah. Mom's been crying for days. Hope you're happy. I stared at it for a long time, then typed me. Tell her she can call, but not to ask me to fix anything. No reply. Instead, I got a message from Dad. Dad, heard you're going somewhere. Hope it gives you what you're looking for. That one, I saved. Before going to bed, I made a small list on a sticky note. Not tasks, not chores, just words. Breathe, walk, sleep, eat well. No guilt. I stuck it to my mirror. It felt like a plan. The airport was quiet that morning. Too early for chaos, too late for silence. I moved through security with one small backpack and no checked luggage. Light, for once. As I waited at the gate, I scrolled through news, podcasts, anything to keep my mind busy. But eventually, I just stared out the window. The sky was pale and open. I couldn't remember the last time I flew alone. A message popped up on my phone. Unknown number. You've made your point. Let it go already. No name, no signature. But I knew the tone. Sarah. I didn't reply. On the plane, I didn't watch a movie. I looked out the window the entire time, watching the land below stretch and blur. Cities gave way to forests, roads disappeared. I felt something in me loosen with every mile. By the time I landed, Montana felt like another planet. The air had weight, the silence had texture. The cabin I'd rented was basic. Wooden beams, no Wi-Fi, one key left in a dusty metal box. Inside, a bed, a stove, a worn leather chair by the window. Perfect. That first night, I didn't unpack. I lit a fire, made soup from a can, and sat by the flames. No one needed me. No one was about to call. I listened to the wind outside like it was speaking a language I hadn't heard since childhood. 2 days in, I hiked alone. Followed a trail that wasn't on the map. Boots crunching on dry leaves, trees like sentinels on both sides. At one clearing, I stopped. No signal, no sound. Just a sky wide enough to disappear into. I thought, this is what absence feels like. Not emptiness, not punishment. Freedom. On the third night, I went into town. A tiny diner with 5 tables and a waitress who called me Hun. I sat at the counter and ordered black coffee and a slice of pie. An older man sat beside me, flipping through a local paper. He glanced at me, nodded once. Passing through? For now. He sipped his coffee. Sometimes that's the only way to figure out where you're actually from. I nodded. Didn't say more. But later, walking back to the cabin under a sky punched full of stars, I knew he was right. I wasn't running. I was recalibrating. The next morning, I woke to another message. This time, it was Mom. Mom, I miss you. I didn't realize how much you were holding together. No request, no manipulation, just that. I typed. Me. I miss you too, but things have to change. She didn't respond right away. That was okay. I stood on the porch, coffee in hand, watching the fog lift from the trees. In the distance, a deer moved between the branches. I didn't need to go to it. I just watched. Present. Alive, unburdened, spring. I came back without telling anyone. Just boarded a train and returned. Sarah was standing on the porch. She looked past me, expecting someone else. I walked by her in silence. Inside, Mom looked up from a book and froze. No guilt, no scolding, just stillness. I set a box on the table. Inside, old photos, spare keys, printed itineraries, everything that once made me their backup plan. This is for you, I said. Everything you ever needed, and more. I turned and left. At the station, I ordered coffee, black, no sugar. I opened my laptop and booked a one-way ticket to Kyoto. My face reflected on the screen. Calm, unapologetic. No permission asked, no explanations given. Outside, a train pulled in with a low, steady roar. I stood to board, carrying nothing I didn't choose. No more saving anyone. Just myself,